If you're looking for a cost-effective way to make a lot of sidewalks for your layout, I want to show you a method I've learned. You can quickly make realistic, inexpensive sidewalks like this for your town. Stay with me and I'll show you how I do it. What I do is this. I start with some masonite, either 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch, depending on what you'd like to do. I use 1/4 of an inch, and then I can use 1/8 of an inch for my streets, which I also put joint compound on the same way. And then that leaves 1/8 of an inch for a curb, which is perfect for my O-scale layout. But whatever you want to choose is fine. Once you get the masonite and you've got your streets laid out and your sidewalks that you need, cut them out of the masonite. And one thing to remember is to cut curves like this in the corners, which adds some more realism. Usually curbs are not square, cornered like this. Okay? So once you've cut out what you want, just get some joint compound from Lowe's or Home Depot. It's pretty cheap. For a whole lot, I could pave a large city with what I've got here, but just take some on a putty knife and start to spread it on the edges, of course, where the sidewalks would be. Now, I don't necessarily always cover the whole board, just to save a little time and compound, because my interiors either have floors or you can't see them at all. But if you're going to see into the interior, you might want to cover the whole piece of masonite. But so for right now, I'm going to do the edges. Make sure it's wide enough for the width of your buildings, sizes of your buildings. And you don't need to worry about the air holes that it might be creating. Probably see them on there, or marks. Just get rid of large lumps. You don't want some real thick joint compound here and not so thick in the back, or your building won't sit level and you might see a gap in the front. Level it off just like that. It's pretty simple. Of course, you'd come around and do this side too. Once you've done that, what I do is I let it dry and then come back and do the edge, because some of that's going to be revealed and I'm going to paint it eventually, and I want the paint to absorb the same on the top and the edge, the curb, and this will help that. Also makes it look more realistic because it looks like concrete everywhere then. So all I need to do is let that dry, then I will go on to the next step. This is a dried portion that I did earlier. What I want to do is just sand it down. Okay, so there's some lumps and unevenness that don't look natural, but if I sand it, I'll get down to a natural look, leaving just enough imperfections to make it look realistic. Also might want to take a knife or some tool to the edge and damage a few corners, because of course sidewalks are never perfect. That adds to the realism. Sometimes with pliers or something with a rough edge you can use just to rough it up some before we paint. So once it's been sanded, be sure you wipe off all of the dust that created by the sanding, because otherwise the paint won't stick. Once it's sanded and ready for painting, it's going to look something like this. And what I do is take the colors that I want and just find some cheap rattle can spray paints. You can use gray or tan or both. I've used both in this case. And take it outside and just spray some of the gray in random areas around the joint compound. And then I will take the tan and do that same thing in different areas, but making sure to cover all of the white compound in one way or another. So it will look more like this, not leave open spots like this. That ends up with gives me a look of this modeled sidewalk color, gray. Okay, so I sprayed the rest of the uncovered sidewalk with the tan and the gray, and now I want to put the joints in. So I just get a square and a brad nail, which has a sharp enough point. Lay the square down and just lightly drag a line, and you can see it quickly and easily makes a scratch in the joint compound. So I do that again, repeat for each of the joints along the sidewalk. So I would do that everywhere, and then come back and I use my finger along this edge with the nail in my hand and drag a line to create the edge for the curb. Okay, don't forget that helps add to the realistic effect. But after that's all done, I'll make a thin wash of black acrylic paint with water and brush that over sidewalk. You can let it dry. You can see how it fills in cracks, and if you want to make some cracks, do the same thing with the nail and fill that in with the black wash. You can let it dry or just take some off like that and reduce the color a little bit, but the color will stay in the cracks and the scratches that you made to leave a nice look of a real sidewalk. Hopefully there you'll get some tips that will help you make your city a better looking place.